Hello guys and welcome back to this tutorial. In the previous video, we went over how to prevent the ball from falling sideways from the player bar and how to make the blocks break. In this video, we're going to create a score system for the game. So let's get into it. First of all, we will create an empty game object that will hold the animation of the score. Let's disable the Gizmos for now and reset the transform. Within this object, we will create another one and it will be 3D object because we're going to need its position. There is no text in 2D, so we will need a 3D text mesh pro. Hit import here, import essentials, and import extras to import other fonts. Wait for it. And once it is done, you see that we have the text here. It's pretty big, so we'll fix this and let's first place a placeholder value, something like 100. Let's set the alignment. So here you see, let's put it in the center, horizontally and vertically. Next, if you want to decrease the size, don't use the scale, use the font size here, something like, let's say, 10. Yeah, this looks fun relatively to the size of the game. Now here you can set the color. Let's keep it as something golden like that. Here you can set an outline to make it a little bit more contrasted. And you see the outline is going inwards and the writing is becoming thinner because of that, so you can delete it a little bit. This looks fine. Now we will animate this. So make sure you have the inner game object selected, hit Ctrl 6 and create an animation. Go to the animation folder and assets, animations, and create score animation. Let's call this score and start the record. Let's make it something, or it will say for 1 second. It goes up a little bit and it will become transparent. Stop the record and let's play the animation. Yeah, that looks fine. Now call this here score and make it a prefab. Make sure you drag the parent game object. Drag it here and now you can delete it. Let's go to our block, open the block script, and here when we detect collision we will instantiate that score value. First we will need a reference to it, so here serialize field of type game object to hold the whole game object, and let's call it score. Go down here and here within the collision detection we will instantiate it. So instantiate score in this position, so transform dot position and without rotation, so quaternion dot identity. Now if we go back to Unity, in the prefab let's assign the score in the prefabs folder, there it is, and assign it. Where is the block? Yeah, here. Assign it here. If we run the game and let's launch the ball, you see our score is visible, but it is playing repeatedly. And we will fix that. It's pretty simple because we haven't destroyed this score yet. So to do that, we need to hold a reference to it, but that will be too complex for a simple block, so we will create another script to do that, and it will be a score manager. Let's go to our scripts folder, create a new C# script, and call it score manager. Go back to the scene, and we will create another game object to hold that. Let's call it score manager. Let's keep things organized here. So I create game objects to separate between categories. We keep the main camera and the managers together. Spawner, manager, and score manager. We will create another separation. Separate the walls and the player and ball. Like that. Now let's open our score manager. And this is going to be a singleton like we did before. So to make it a singleton, it's pretty simple. We create a static instance of it, so public static score manager. We call it instance, and in the start method, if instance is null, then instance equals this, else if instance not equal to this, destroy this. This way, we ensure that there is always only one score manager in the game. Also, we will need a float, public float, to hold our global score value, so float, and call it score. We will need a reference to the score prefab, so serialize field, game private, game object, and we will call it score prefab. And a reference to text that we're going to add later. So private text mesh pro UGUI, and we will add that later. We will display the score with that. Next, we will need to create a method to increase the score. So public void increase score, and it will take a transform where to instantiate the score prefab. So transform tr, just tr, not to override the game object's transform, and int the value of the score. Now we will instantiate it the same way that we did earlier, but keeping a reference to it. So game object score equals instantiate the score prefab in transform that we got in the parameter dot position and with no rotation. So quaternion dot identity. This creates the score prefab instance and stores it in this score variable. Now we will set the value because we will make it dependent on this value. For example, if we add a power up to the game, you can change the value here. And the displayed value also will change. So in order to do that, score dot get component, and we will get the text component. So it's a text mesh pro component dot text equals value dot toString. That's pretty simple. and we will destroy it actually after 1 second after its animation is over. So in order to do that, destroy that score, and you can pass another number here, a float, and it will be the delay before destroying it. After that, or actually, yeah, after that, we will increase the score value. So score plus equals the value. Oh yeah, and this here is hiding the score up here. So let's change this. Control R to refactor it, and let's call it score instance. Now, if we go back to the block, let's remove this line here and call it like that. Score manager dot instance dot increase score. We pass it the transform and the value, let's say, of 100. Go back to the Unity editor and don't forget to select the score, give it the score manager script, and assign the prefab here. So prefabs, and assign the score prefab. Also, the score will be initialized at 0, and let's run the game. If I hit space, nothing is happening, and we have an error down here. So if I click on this, and here, it actually tells us that the error is here, and that's because we are getting directly this text mesh pro component, and it is not in the parent game object, it's actually in the child game object. So to get that, get component in children, and this should fix it. Go back to the editor and run the game again. And now it's working. And you see sometimes there is a little bit of flickering. That's because the animation is looping a little bit before the score is being destroyed. So let's decrease this delay here to something like 0.9, and this will fix it. Next, we will display the score value here. That's pretty simple. Wait for it to compile. Now, let's show the gizmos actually, and we will be displaying it here in the upper left corner of the camera. So, create. Now, go to UI and create a text. And we want it to be a plain text, so here, yeah, text mesh pro. And we will call this score. You see it's pretty big, but it won't be displayed like that. You see it's also created an event system and a canvas. Let's go to the canvas and make sure you set here to scale with screen size, and here set your monitor's resolution 1920 by 1080 for me, and don't mind the other settings for now. Go back to the score, and if I go to the game view, you see it's actually being displayed here. So what are we doing here is just we are binding this canvas here to the camera. So there is our text. Now to place it in the upper corner, select the score here, click on this square, hold Alt, and select this. You see it's being displayed in the upper corner. Hit F to focus on it, and I want to see the two views together. So let's do that. And we will change its place and alignment to center. Now let's scale it up a little, something like 72, and let's drag this and put this down here. This looks good. Let's change the font to something a little more arcade, like that, and call this score. Now we will duplicate this, call it score value. This will hold the value and will be initialized at zeros. Drag it here, drag two of them a little bit downwards. This looks good. Now let's go back to our score manager, and that's what are we going to use. So let's make this serialized. Serialize field, remove this underscore, and once we increase the score, we will change the score value. So text dot text equals score dot toString. Let's go back here and run the game. Double click here to maximize it. And we have an error because we haven't assigned the reference. Select the score manager and here assign the score value reference. Run the game again. Let's maximize the view. And you see our score is increasing. That's very nice. So I think this is enough for this video. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like what you see. See you next time.